Well, yeah, as Christina mentioned, the 2020 season obviously is behind us now, but what an incredible, challenging and unique season it was for Nashville Soccer Club. I think we all expected it to be different and unusual from the outset, but not quite what we expected. But, you know, so many positives as well as the negatives, a record-breaking opening game, and, you know, to finish up there with a handful of teams that have ever had that level of performance in their inaugural season, I think was incredible. And, you know, I think it's great testament to this organisation and our supporters and our partners that everybody managed to get through that despite the setbacks the city had in the tornado, and then everybody was shut down for COVID, and, you know, our own outbreak whilst in Orlando. And I think despite that, you know, reaching the semi-final of our conference doesn't happen by accident. And it was a, you know, testament to a great amount of work by an awful lot of people. And, you know, as I personally reflected on 2020, what became clear to me was that it was the quality of the people we assembled overall at the club that got us through these most difficult times, and were able to achieve what we achieved, whether that was players on the pitch or staff elsewhere, our owners, our partners. It was the assemblance of that group that really did it. And I wanted to take the time today to hold this and talk a little bit about Mike Jacobs and the crucial part he played in that. Of course, all of you know what a GM does in a club, and, you know, Mike's job here is the overall delivery of the soccer part of the club day to day, and that's a hugely challenging role. You know, you don't get to pick the team that goes out on the pitch. That sits with the coach. You don't coach the players, and you don't necessarily even attend all the games, but you literally have to have sort of one eye on every part of the day-to-day operations at the practice facility and beyond, in recruitment and equipment and our academy. So it's a you know, not inconsequential task day to day, and it's important to ensure that we fully deliver in all those areas. And it's all those some of the parts that bring the whole together. And, you know, just as for myself as CEO, I have to take responsibility for the whole operation, the sporting side and the business side. And Mike's the person that I entrust that sporting side day to day to. And I have to say, I couldn't be happier than having Mike in that role. And Mike was actually the first person I hired in MLS in our team. I was employee number one and Mike's employee number two. And his initial contract finished at the end of 2020. And today is really an opportunity to say that I and the owners are hugely delighted to announce that we reached agreement to extend Mike's role here at Nashville Soccer Club for a further 3 years. He's a hugely talented individual, committed, extremely dedicated. And, you know, anyone who knows Mike or spends any time with him knows that not only does he do a great job, but he eats, sleeps and breathes this thing. You sometimes have to tell him to relax, you know, and not just think about it every moment of every day. And, you know, that's a great asset to have, particularly in a new club that's kind of going places. And so really, before I hand over to Mike, I just wanted to thank him and let everyone know that his contribution to our club has been exceptional. And I know he's as excited as I am about continuing to build on what we've started here and ensure that, you know, week to week, season to season, year to year, that we deliver something that Nashville can be proud of. And, you know, today's about Mike's part in that, and big congratulations to him and his family. Mike?
Thanks, Ian. First off, I'd like to thank John Ingram and our ownership group for continuing to have the confidence in not only myself, but our staff and players to continue to build off of this proof of concept that we developed during our inaugural season as an expansion team. The opportunity to work, you know, day to day like this wouldn't be possible without those who I'm closest with on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, I feel so appreciative to be able to come to work each day with the likes of Assistant General Manager Ali Mackay, Chief Scout Chance Myers, Director of Strategy Analytics Oliver Miller-Farrell. Being able to work so closely with Gary Smith as our head coach really enables the leadership on the sporting side of the club to move in sync every step of the way. Being able to lean on the direction, management support of Ian Ayre after leading one of the biggest clubs in the world, executing some of the most successful player deals in English football history, really gives me the ideal setting to continue to kind of thrive and be successful. In what was the most challenging year in Major League Soccer history for an expansion team, combating 2 different tornadoes, global pandemic, having to withdraw from MLS's back tournament, multiple hour rain delays in Dallas, Miami, and even here in Nashville once after we resumed. Knowing all that, we still found a way to not only be one of the lone expansion teams in MLS history to not only advance in the playoffs, but to win multiple playoff games before taking the eventual MLS Cup champs to extra time. The season was also capped off at putting together the best defense and goals against average in MLS history for an expansion team. You know, there was a lot of exciting milestones that we went through this past year as we challenged through the 2020 season. But, you know, we also really appreciate the fact that 2020 was simply just that. It was our first season. We built some really important steps, and, you know, it's important to kind of understand it really was the first step. And, you know, no one in this group is going to rest on the laurels of this last year. You know, the group on and off the field is pretty grounded and understands that, you know, we're continuing kind of a work in progress with a goal toward building consistency and sustaining success. Heading into 21, we've got a really firm handle of who we are and what we have the chance to become. 2020 was a season where we were able to create a foundation and identity, and 21 is going to be all about trying to build off that as well as adding and enhancing. With so much for our players and staff from a successful season in 2020 returning, we're all really looking forward, excited to what's on the horizon in 21.
Thank you, Mike and Ian, and congratulations to you, Mike. With that, we'll now open the floor for questions. And as I mentioned earlier, please allow me to do the chat if you have a question for one of our panelists. So I'll give a few minutes for those to alert. And we will begin with Tim Sullivan from For Club and Country with a question for you, Ian.
Ian, obviously, everyone here probably is pretty familiar with Mike, but what was it about him that made you want to have him continue with the club for 3 more years?
Many things, really. I think, you know, I've said many times before that I'm a big believer that you know, when you hire people, you want to hire at least 50% of that hiring should be done on the basis of who they are as a person as much as their skills. And, you know, Mike came with a whole bunch of skills and experience across different leagues and organizations. But I think we want to assemble a senior team here that really fitted together well and, you know, have the tenacity and the commitment and you know, and that dedication that you need. And in a new club, you know, there's something new every day here. There's a new challenge, or there's something we haven't quite finished yet. Or, you know, in 2021, we'll be driving the bus along through the 21 season at the same time building a whole new stadium. And, you know, you have to have people who have that dedication and commitment, but they also have to have the respect of their own teams and the rest of the team. And Mike has that in spades. And you know, I think it was those things, seeing his dedication day to day, seeing how his team responds to him and seeing how he fits so well into my senior team here. All of the above, really. And it was a pretty easy decision and just a matter of making the right deal with him.
Tom Poker with MajorLeagueSoccer.com.
Hey guys, Mike, congrats on the deal. I'm sure that you had a long-term view anyway when you were, you know, building out this inaugural roster. But, you know, I guess how important is this new contract with the security and the knowing that you're going to be able to see through, you know, this exciting and positive foundation that you guys built in year 1?
Thanks, Tom. It's a great opportunity for us to kind of be able to try to work towards sustaining success. And, you know, from the get-go, we looked at this with the idea of putting a team together that would help us be successful straight away in 2020. But we always had an eye on what was going to happen in the future. And, you know, we look at our build, the idea of having young players, you know, either guys who came right in the team, like Randall Leal or Alistair Johnston, whether it was players who gradually worked themselves in the group, like Brian Anunga, you know, or young talents that everyone's really high on, like Jack Mayer. I think the thought was that this group was going to have the chance kind of all grow up together. And we're really excited about watching this, you know, where we saw obviously an encouraging first chapter here this last season to think about this exciting young group that's going to continue to kind of grow and learn under the tutelage of these established veterans we have here. You know, really, it's exciting to think about not only what happened in this first season, but what's on the horizon for this group.
Ben Wright with Broadway Sports.
Yeah, hey, Mike. First of all, congrats on the extension. just 2020 was obviously a really weird year in a lot of ways. But from your perspective, what would you say the most pleasant surprise on the field was, just with how Nashville performed? And then how does that conversely affect you going into the 2021 season?
Hey, Ben, thanks. I think that, there were certainly some things that you'd expect from specific individuals, but what's most unique about an expansion team is, I referenced this after we had to go to Portland, and, when I was in Kansas City, not only was Portland one of our chief rivals, but, for me, I would say it's as tough a place to play in the league. And, we went there against a nucleus of guys who have played together for, in some cases 6 years, with our group that had been together for maybe like 6 weeks. So it's one of those things where even when you draw it up on paper, you don't really know what's going to happen until I get out there. And what I do think was unique about what we did with our build was the focus we spent thinking about cohesion, not just collecting good players, but who we thought would play well together. And I think what I was, say, surprised, I guess maybe most pleased about was to see how quickly guys like Dax McCarty and Annabelle Godoy partnered in midfield, to see how quickly guys like Walker Zimmerman and Dave Romney partnered in the middle of the back. As you watch those guys as the season went along, you would have thought they were together for years, not weeks. And it's just amazing to kind of see how quickly they were able to kind of mesh and gel. And I think that had as much to do with them as individuals, their ability to buy in on the group. And I think the leadership of Gary Smith to find the best system, shape, tactics to put them all in position to be successful.
Dre Hills with the Tennessean for a question, with a question for you, Mike.
My congratulations and Happy New Year to you and to Ian. But obviously you've had your foundations of what you identify as, right? You're a proud New Yorker, you talk about the Knicks, you talk about all these different passions that you have. And then of course, in your professional career, you've been able to really absorb and identify with, who you're with. And we've talked a lot about your time at Kansas City, your time at Duke. Well, as you moved into this role with Nashville SC, how do you see your identity with the club and how it's reflected upon you this past year, especially with everything that's gone on?
Hey, Drake, thanks. And I appreciate, kind of walking through, where I came from, because, you don't know where you're going until you know kind of where you came from and who you are. And, what I think is interesting is, the idea of taking pieces of each of those steps along the way to kind of form who I am now. And whether it's things I drew from growing up in New York to the experiences and being somewhere with high expectation demands, like at Duke University or at Sporting Kansas City, to now gain the confidence of people like Ian Ayre or John Ingram to be able to put them all to test here. I think all those experiences help prepare me to do what I'm doing now. When I've been asked before about this job, it's a dream job for me. Not just a chance to put a team together and help run a club, but to do it here in Nashville, to do it with people who I think have shared visions, people who get along real well. As Ian mentioned earlier about selecting staff, the premium placed on who they are as people. What's great is this group here, there's a reason there's a lot of buy-in is there's a lot of shared vision for not only how a team should play, but how people should work every day. And, for me, I think, it's interesting. You mentioned, the New York Knickerbockers, who are now 5-3 this NBA season, after a win last night. I was just saying to our guys here, what I think I found most unique about what the Knicks are doing right now is they're kind of doing it in a way that people associate with New York Knicks basketball. They're doing it with a very tough defense, guys who play really hard, kind of grinding out results. And when I think about the teams that I've been a part of, I think it's easy to be involved in recruitment or sales when you believe in the product. And I think for me, a key component probably to growing up watching New York Knicks, to Duke soccer teams, to Sporting Kansas City teams, I think they all embodied some of those things that our NSC team had this past year. And, where there's still things we want to kind of be able to grow into, to improve, to evolve and sustain. And, what I would say, I hope that our NSC team is always one that people hate to play against. I hope we're always the one that makes it really hard to do the things you want to do, that takes people out of their game and makes them uncomfortable. And to me, I think if we're always doing that on the field, I think if our staff is a collection of guys who are willing to kind of grind hard and kind of, be willing to kind of work hard and play hard, I think we've only kind of scratched the surface what this group's capable of on and off the field.
A follow-up question from Tim Sullivan. Actually, this time for you, Mike.
Like, as you build towards the next season, do you have updates on where things are with the roster going forward? Obviously, you guys were still in negotiations with Eric Miller when you announced your roster decisions, and any further updates going forward here either?
Hey, Tim, thanks. What I would say is that in the coming days and weeks, you'll be getting updates on the roster. You'll have some updates on players who return to our group. You'll have some updates on some new signings as well.